Pleased to be joined on One by Matthew Blittner. We thank you for coming on with us, Matthew. He is the author of 3 books about our tri-state area hockey teams: Unforgettable Rangers, Unforgettable Devils, and Unforgettable Islanders. Matthew, first of all, thanks for joining us, and how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Chris and James. It's always a pleasure to speak to WFUV and to help support you guys in whatever needs to be done.
We appreciate that. We know you talked to us last year in March, and right away, of course, the news with Henrik Lundqvist, who will be done with his Rangers career now, and whether or not that decision is mutual or not, and what comes next. We want to get into all of that, but tributes are pouring out for Lundqvist across the sport, and especially here, a New York sports legend, really, and the king. So I want to give you the chance to offer your tribute to Henrik Lundqvist and what he means to the Rangers franchise.
Well, there's absolutely no replacing him. I know the Rangers have their succession plan in place right now of some tandem with Igor Shesterkin and Alexander Georgiev. And of course, the two of them are fantastic young goalies, but every era has to have a beginning and an end to it, unfortunately. And Henrik Lundqvist's time with the Rangers came to an end maybe a little bit sooner than expected. He was, of course, the heart and soul of the team, the face of the franchise for 15 years. No one can take that away from him. No one ever will take that away from him. The numbers he put up and the things he did both on the ice as well as his very charitable off-the-ice endeavors make him, without a doubt, a Hall of Famer in both the Hockey Hall of Fame and the Humanitarian Hall of Fame. There's really no better person to personify being a superstar in New York than Henrik Lundqvist.
And Matthew, we've seen across sports, not just in hockey, but sometimes you'll have guys play their entire career basically with one team and then end their career with another team, and it's a strange experience, right? Whether it be, Tom Brady this year with the Buccaneers or Michael Jordan with the Wizards, for example. When you think about next year and Henrik Lundqvist, assuming he's going to play, doing so for a team besides the Rangers, how strange is that experience going to be for Ranger fans?
It's going to be pretty weird, but Ranger fans of a certain generation have some experience in it. Back in the mid-1970s, Ed Jockman had a similar experience where he was waived and then he went to the Red Wings and came back for a most memorable game at Madison Square Garden, where the Ranger fans essentially became Red Wings fans that night as they cheered Jockman on as if he was still one of their own. Henrik Lundqvist, right up there in terms of Ranger fan lore. He'll probably get maybe not quite the same ovation just because times are different, but he'll definitely get one of those ovations that you'll never forget. The Rangers and their fans, over the last few years, they've seen players come back, whether it be Ryan Callahan, Ryan McDonough, Dan Girardi, Derek Stepan, even Max Zuccarello. The list goes on, from those 2012 to 2015 Rangers, and they always come back as welcome heroes, essentially. But Henrik Lundqvist is going to be in a league unto himself on that. Even Mark Stahl, who was traded away just a couple days beforehand, it'll be weird to see him in a Red Wings uniform. But no doubt when the Red Wings come to Madison Square Garden, if they're fans, of course, that's a whole other story of whether things will be back to that some bit of normalcy. But Mark Stahl will undoubtedly have a huge ovation in his own right, but Henrik Lundqvist will still be the one that is cheered to the point where we will be talking about his return for generations to come.
And to what extent might this have been mutual and in the interest of both parties? Of course, the Rangers have Shesterkin and Georgiev, who you mentioned, at goaltender. How confident do they feel with 2 young goaltenders? And how is this something that maybe just benefits both parties for Henrik to walk away at this point and give way to the 2 24-year-olds?
Well, look, Henrik, he was an excellent soldier. When he played backup most of this year to Georgiev and then Shesterkin when he came up in January, and even the year previously when for the second half of the year he was pretty much Georgiev's backup. It's something that the Rangers maybe weren't expecting this soon. He did have 1 year left on his contract. But as we all know, things have to change. And, when the Rangers drafted Shesterkin several years ago, there was talk almost immediately that he would be the heir apparent to Lundqvist. We now see, albeit a small sample size, that, he could very well be. And Georgiev, who a lot of people hadn't heard of until just a couple of years ago, thrust himself into that spotlight as well. So for the Rangers, they get to continue having a lineage of great goaltenders. Again, we've mentioned Jockman before. Mike Richter was a fantastic goalie. John Van Beesbrook was with the Rangers for a while. Of course, Kevin Weech, Henrik Lundqvist, now Shesterkin and Georgiev. And, of course, we still further back even, but I don't think anyone listening to this is going to remember the Rangers goalies from the 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s. So, but the Rangers have always had a lot of great goaltenders in their history. It's something that they've always had. For Lundqvist, again, he was a great soldier. He never said he wanted out. I believe Rick Carpinell from The Athletic wrote in his column the other day that the harshest word that Lundqvist used was that it was challenging. Lundqvist, of course, there were rumors that he was offered a chance to leave when they first went into the rebuild in February 2018. Whether or not those rumors are true, Lundqvist wanted to stay. I don't think he necessarily wanted to leave before his contract was up, but he also knew that, for him, he didn't want to sit there and be the third string goalie and, potentially impede any of the young guys. So he knew what he wants. Whether or not he's going to continue his career elsewhere, it's up to him and his agent, Don Meehan, to figure out. As of this point, Lundqvist has not actually officially made it stated that he wants to continue next year, although that is the belief. So that will be something to bear watching. I believe it was Larry Brooks of the New York Post the other day who actually wrote in one of his columns that Lundqvist will, of course, take the time, but it was up to him and the Rangers. The Rangers wanted to do right by him instead of using the potential second buyout window that would have been triggered by arbitration filings to get it done now so Lundqvist can figure things out, potentially have more suitors, because he's not going to want to go to a team that is not a contender. If he's going to latch on somewhere else, which, again, is still an if, not a definite, he's going to want to latch on with a team that has a chance to win the elusive Stanley Cup. And those teams do not look for goalies a month before the season. They're looking for them now, if they are looking. So it just made sense, and the right timing was there for it. I know a lot of Ranger fans will, of course, miss Lundqvist, but this is something that had to happen for both him and for the franchise. And, of course, we look forward to the day when he either returns in front of the fans as a visitor or when he returns to have his number 30 raised to the rafters, which will be sooner rather than later.
And Matthew, somewhat switching gears here, but looking at the Rangers now, they made an expanded Stanley Cup playoffs qualifying round this year, wound up being swept in that round by the Carolina Hurricanes. They have the number 1 pick in the upcoming NHL draft. All indications are that it looks like they're going to keep it. How optimistic should Ranger fans be going into next year? It'll be a different year, obviously, without Henrik Lundqvist and the end of that era of the New York Rangers. But that being said, with the young talent this team has, how optimistic should fans of the Rangers be that they can build off the momentum from the end of this past year and carry that into next season?
Look, of course, with a lot of young kids, there's a lot of promise, a lot of stuff that we don't know yet. We don't know how some of the young kids are going to respond. Of course, there's a lot of hope and hype surrounding them. We saw Shesterkin in a small sample size. He went on a terrific run before injuries knocked him out a couple of different times, including the playoffs. The Rangers, of course, have Philip Hedl, who, even though he has been around for a few years now, he's still one of the young guys on the team. They'll have the number 1 pick. There are presumptions about who it will be. Regardless, the Rangers will get a very good number 1 pick in the player that they select. They have Capo Cato, who was last year's number 2 overall. They have a good nucleus, of course, Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren on the back end. They have Keandre Miller coming up. Nils Lundqvist will potentially be over after the Swedish season, if not the season following. So they have a lot of things to look forward to. Of course, you have to temper that a little bit because when you have so many young guys on a team, there's bound to be some learning curve and some rookie mistakes that are made. It's only natural. It happens. Fans can't get overhyped or they can't overreact to the inevitable rookie mistakes because it's just part of the learning curve in the process. And, the Rangers will get through that and their talent will shine. They do have a lot of talent in terms of skill positions. They'll have returning Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin, who both of them could have been viable, Hart Trophy candidates. I know Panarin finished, in the top 3 this year, and there's no reason why the two of them can't do that again for the next few years. So the Rangers do have a lot to like about them, but remember, they are still technically in a rebuild. They're not expected to go from making the expanded playoffs to being a perennial power threat in the Eastern Conference and the league next year. Maybe in 2 or 3 years from now, we can start talking about the same way we did from 2012 to 2015 when they were one of the best teams in the league year in and year out. They're not quite there just yet. They can absolutely get there, but it's something that, it's still going to be baby steps. They're not quite ready to, jump off. Of course, they can prove that all wrong, start off the year 10-0 and march all the way to the final and make everything that I'm saying right now completely obsolete. But the Rangers right now, they're trending upwards. They're just not quite at that peak just yet.
Matthew, I want to jump over to the Islanders, who really surprised everyone by getting as far as they did to the East Finals and, taking another step after last year under Barry Trotz. They surprised everyone. They go into free agency. Sorokin is the young goaltender. What do you look at from an Islanders team that was really impressive, that played a Tampa Bay Lightning team who wins the Stanley Cup Finals pretty well? What do you think about the Islanders going into next year and what they may have to look forward to?
But Islanders GM Lou Lamoriello just the other day, happened to bring about how he expects a lot of the players to be back. That's, of course, something that's going to be very important for the Islanders if they continue to have their familiarity with each other, which will breed chemistry. Of course, they go as far as Matthew Barzal and Anthony Beauvillier are going to take them up front, not to discount anyone else who contributes. Of course, Brock Nelson had a terrific year, and, it goes on and on the list. But with the expected cap crunch, we're going to see what GMs, not just with the Islanders, but across the league, can do to keep their teams intact and then to augment them with players who might be able to push them over the hump. So the Islanders, they went to the second round last year. They went to the third round this year. So they are tracking upward as well. The Islanders will, of course, have a question and goal of, is Thomas Greiss going to somehow come back? He probably will not, just because Sorokin will be there along with Varlamov. That's just my guess. There's nothing to say that it can't go in another direction, but that does look how it's going to go. Sorokin has a lot of the same qualities that Shesterkin has that the Rangers have been touting for a few years. So, to have another top-flight Russian goaltender here in the Big Apple, which, of course, would make for great storylines for whenever the Rangers and Islanders face each other. There's never a shortage of storylines when the two teams get together, but this would just be another subplot to it. And the Islanders, they'll have some interesting prospects coming up the pipeline. We'll still have to see what's going to happen with Noah Dobson and Oliver Wahlstrom in regards to, if they can carve out those in some sort of regular. The Islanders will be one of those teams that's expected to take that next step, that next leap, and go from an Eastern Conference finalist to potentially a Stanley Cup finalist.
Matthew, one more before we let you go. As you look at the Islanders core right now, look at the guys they have on that team. With those main pieces, like you were talking about with Barzal and Beauvillier, et cetera, do you think that's a team that can win a Stanley Cup next year with that core, or do they need another piece or two to try to get them over the hump and past the blue bloods of the NHL?
It's an interesting question. And, there's no reason the Islanders can't do it next year. they have, like I said, they'll be solid in goal regardless of which 2 out of the 3 goalies they have. Their blue line, they'll probably need to shore up maybe a little bit just in terms of getting a nice balance in there. Not to say that they didn't have a good balance this year, but with the cap crunch, they're going to have to figure out who stays and who goes. Up front, of course, a lot of people look at the Islanders and say, well, with all the talent that they have, they should score more. But the whole thing is Barry Trotter's system is one where the forwards are defensively responsible. So that might bring it down a little bit, the scoring. But if the Islanders can fill out maybe another middle six type forward, and, there's no reason at that point that they can't go all the way. There's no reason they can't go all the way right now. It's just if you're asking if they want to maybe add one more piece or something, maybe a middle six forward or maybe a second pairing defenseman who could really maybe put them over the hump.
Matthew Blittner, he has 3 books, Unforgettable Rangers, Unforgettable Devils, Unforgettable Islanders, and breaking down New York, New Jersey hockey for us this evening. Thank you so much, Matthew, for being with us.
Thanks, Matthew.
Been my pleasure, guys, and, hoping that we get to return to an NHL season sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.